Hello, welcome back. GPS to God. We are so glad that you are here with us. Daniel Sanders, Stefano Patterson, Ryan Gotro, and today we have with us Mr. Brad Jenkins. Brad, thanks for being here today.
It's great to be here. Thank you for the opportunity.
Hey, absolutely. We're going to get into how we know each other here in just a second. But first, gpstogod.com. That's the website. You can reach out to us via email at mailroom@gpstogod.com. Email's been a little light lately, so y'all reach out. We're ready to hear from you again.
Pick back up now that Ron's back.
Yeah.
I was going to say by now it's been a
he's-
while.
I
We
mean,
had that.
he's-
It's not new anymore. So
Welcome
it's
him
not new.
back. He's
Ryan's been on paternity leave
he
for
has
a long
been
time.
paternity leave
Been on it forever.
Hey, let me tell you, he took full advantage of that paternity leave.
Yes,
he, went-
sir.
every second.
he dropped
Every second of
podcasts, he dropped work, he dropped everything except Taco Bell and the baby.
You better believe it. It's all right here.
This a guy right here.
It's officially called Family. What is it called? FML Family.
FMLA.
Yeah.
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 Great stuff. Great stuff.
Good deal.
He's a rabid Taco Bell fan and was texting us at 6 o'clock in the morning one morning when Mexican
You
pizzas came
better
out.
believe
came
it.
back out.
Hey, that was for y'all. I was making sure y'all were prepared to go
Appreciate
get
it.
that.
For
Appreciate it.
Good looking
Taco
out
Pete,
from my brother.
Taco Bell Mexican pizzas at 6 o'clock in the morning.
That's true friendship.
Yeah.
Right there.
Never too early. I guess.
Do what I can.
True
Never too
something.
early.
True something. I don't know what it was, but
You know, I'm up with the baby, so might as
Why
well.
not?
Yeah.
We might as well be up with you.
yeah.
Yep.
I mean, he didn't have to work or anything. He get to go take a nap. He's like, yeah, it's good.
It was. It was great.
But welcome back. We're glad you're
Thank
back.
you. Appreciate it.
How's Mama? How's the baby?
Doing well. I'm sure they'll figure out something to be mad at me for, so I'll figure out that later. But it's all good.
I mean,
Might as well.
why? Why go there? I mean, it could have been all rainbows and
Oh,
roses.
it happens.
She's an incredible
It
Could
happens.
mother.
have just
She
left. Could have just
is.
left it
She
at.
is.
It's been good. It's been good. Girls
has
doing
been good.
fine. It's been good. But he decided to step on into it. I guess
It's been 6 weeks. It's time for to go back to work. You know, it's ready. It's time to go. Love you to death. Love you to death. But
Well, none of that's going to get cut out. So you got about 2 weeks of freedom here, buddy.
Be sleeping right over there in the corner.
Brad, you may have to take him back with you.
Yeah, we got room. We got room.
You got an
We'll take
opening?
it. Yeah, we'll take it.
But,
Squad needs another.
Brad and I have known each other probably, 22 years-ish, somewhere in that neighborhood.
Yeah.
Nice.
We haven't seen each other for 20 years, so
Wow.
okay.
it's been a long-distance relationship. But
Yeah.
Extremely.
we'll see if he remembers this. So Brad married my brother, one of my brothers. Brad performed the ceremony for one of my brothers. During the wedding, Brad's facing out to the crowd. My brother's right in front of him. I'm the best man. I'm right next to my brother. And there is a wasp that is wreaking havoc around everybody. And, everybody's trying to hold it together. And Brad
Nobody's reacting to it or anything.
Brad does,
Small
he's
reactions.
Okay.
very small, and he kind of, smiled at it a little and just, but he held his composure. I think my brother kind of did a twitch or something a little bit,
good.
took a half step back, and
Yeah.
the wasp landed right on top of my head, and I was like, I'm not moving for nothing.
Wow. You took it.
I stonewalled it. I was
Really?
like, yeah, I was.
Did he sing you?
He did not. I was prepared for the sting,
Oh,
but he
okay.
did not.
Lots of hairspray. It wouldn't have done anything.
No,
Lots of gel.
that was back in the about 2000. No, that was after that. But early
Lots of
2000s,
He may have tried. We don't know.
very much the gel stage. But yeah, I mean, it's like wearing a helmet,
Yep.
I understand. I understand. No
after-
shame in
Hit
it.
that thing and fell down.
Oh, yeah. After the ceremony, they got the reception or whatever, and this guy comes up to me. He's like, "Man, I was told, don't you move. If you move, I'm gonna get." So I felt like it was a little minor victory for me.
It's awesome, man.
Yeah.
You're a trooper.
So that's
good, man.
that's some
Just
history.
looking out for the family.
Some
Yeah.
history for me and Brad
Yeah.
right there. Yeah.
Couldn't have been swatting at that thing. You'd still be talked about probably.
Oh,
if you
yeah.
would have known
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
Yeah.
Ruined the whole thing.
Yeah. But good time. So
Good stuff.
Brad, we're going to get into a lot of Brad's life since then, but man, let's go back to the beginning. Let's How did you get into ministry? I mean, you married. We just
Wow.
hit on you married my brother. How'd you get
Yeah.
into ministry?
Well, so grew up in a Christian home. Mom and dad, from my earliest memories, were involved in student ministry at some level, whether that was Young Life or Campus Life or just church ministry, involved with students. So grew up in that environment with believing parents who I constantly saw digging into the Word, constantly saw them investing into other people, constantly saw my mom, prayer group, prayer partners, all of it. Knew that we were being prayed for a lot. We're 3 boys in the family. Mom needed a lot of prayer. We did too. And we were all boy. And so it was, that was just how I grew up. I grew up in church, grew up around ministry. Dad was not in full-time ministry at the time. He was working for the phone company. And
Was that Ma Bell?
Yeah, and then South Central, and he started climbing around manholes and stuff, connecting phone lines on that crew, and ended up retired as executive vice president of AT&T at
Nice.
51 years old.
Oh,
I'm
my
52 now,
goodness.
so I'm just a piece of junk. But no.
He's climbed the ladder. It's just a little shorter ladder than what that.
Yeah, my ladder's it's a 2-rung. I get afraid of heights. But that's awesome. But and then Dad had 2 very successful careers. He at 51 retired, went to seminary, and then was on staff at First Baptist Jackson, Mississippi, and Brentwood Baptist for a lot of years, and just retired at the end of 2018 from Brentwood, dealing with Parkinson's, a 20-year bout with Parkinson's, and so that was the reason that he retired. He just couldn't perform the job the way he wanted to,
Mm-hmm.
Right.
and so he told him it was time and went out, and but didn't quit living, didn't quit being a grandfather, being a father, and investing in us. So watch that all along. Now, how did I get into ministry was your question, and that was the example I had.
Yeah.
But I got into ministry through just some personal wrestling with the Lord. Wanted to play ball, had an opportunity to play ball.
Let's say he says he wanted to play ball. Brad was a baller. Don't let him mislead you here. He was a baller. All right. He's got a ring in his pocket.
Yeah.
So
had an opportunity to play ball at a high level, and enjoyed that, and had a lot of success in it. But ball was my God early through school. It took a knee injury for God to break my spirit and break my will, and in that process, Mom and Dad continued. I think every week I got a note from Mom, Jeremiah 29:11, and she said, "There's a purpose and a plan in all of this." And every week I got more and more bitter towards God about not being able to play. I thought, tore ACL, PCL, 5 surgeries coming back, went through 18 months of therapy. Didn't think I'd be there again. And
what year was this?
that was sophomore year of college.
Back in the 90s, though, like
Late 80s.
Late
yeah.
80s. So
Yeah.
medical.
Yeah. That was.
Medical technology today is so much different
Yeah.
than back then.
Well, I was immobile on crutches for 16 weeks.
Oh my.
And now they don't do
Holy
it at
cow.
all like
Yeah,
that. They're
that's
moving
not
you
even-
as soon as it
Yeah.
happens.
Yeah.
So it was a very different process. Had great
Sure.
doctors, it was Elrod and Clark that did the stuff. So, but it was a different ball game then.
Yeah.
And through that bitterness and the breaking of all of that, God, and through my mom and dad's prayers and constant investment in me, I finally believed that God had purpose and plan in all of that, and a purpose and plan for my life that was bigger than what I ever understood before. And I had given my life to the Lord in high school, and but hadn't given over the throne to Him
Right.
at that point. And in this knee situation, I did, and was willing to say, "Here, take all my dreams and everything as part of that." And got to win, got the rings after that point, got the opportunities beyond that. But God gave those things back when I surrendered the rest of me. And that doesn't always happen, but it did in my case. And I think he replaces those things sometimes. But part of that was feeling him call me to ministry, and I began ministry then. Like at that Christmas break, I found a place to serve and started serving, and started in youth ministry the next semester. I had my first youth ministry job before I graduated. It took 26 hours my second semester of my senior year to get done. Wow. Had another year of eligibility. Said, I just want to be done and go on. So,
You mentioned your dad and the influence your parents have had on you. Your dad recently passed away, just not that long ago at all. How did you see him? I mean, you know how he poured into you. How did you see him pour into others that he was around?
Yeah. Most of his ministry life, I wasn't living at home. I saw him as a young kid doing that, but as an adult and as college beyond, and I was on staff other places, and we never were in the same area for very long, but have heard a lot, seen a lot of his influence in other people, run into people, friends that he's that have been in his church and everything. But just really in his passing, so many people have come out and sent notes and shared stories, and Mom and Dad just lived life, and they lived life the way God asked them to. And they got into His Word. Their lives were transformed by it, transformed by people that invested in them. I'm gonna spend this weekend with the guy and his wife who led Mom and Dad to the Lord. And I'm gonna be
That's
there.
awesome.
My
That's great.
One of my sons is playing against Louisiana Monroe, and they're in Monroe, Louisiana. So we're going down to watch that game, and I'm gonna spend the night with them, and that's neat. But his heart for discipleship was forefront of everything he did. He wanted to invest in people and wanted to press Jesus into the lives of people around him. Relationships matter in everything that we do, and they should matter above most everything else. Yeah. Our relationship with the Lord, followed by relationship with other people, and then how does that relate to the world around us? How can those two things impact people who don't know the Lord? Yeah. And that's how Dad lived his life, and that's how I've tried to live mine, and we've tried to serve in ministry. But Mom and Dad were just living, and along the way, a lot of people fell into the contagion of their lifestyle and who they were, and the Jesus that they loved. And it's been cool to hear some of those stories and to see Dad's influence at a level that I don't even think he and Mom understand. So, in a sense, as part of Dad's funeral, Mom got to hear some of hers as well, of the investment that she's had in people's lives and how she's walked. And so it was really neat.
Which is really, I think, a great model of just be real. You're not trying to sell somebody a bill of goods.
Exactly.
I mean, just in ministry, not in ministry, when you're living your everyday life, if you're chasing God, people should see that, just how you interact with them and just being normal, being real. And we all struggle, but I struggle in a different way because I know God is carrying my burdens, that kind of stuff. But that's a great testimony. And you talked about your dad struggling with Parkinson's, fighting that for 20 years. Crazy disease that has no cure and is, I mean, I'm not a doctor, obviously, but not understood very well either. What kind of struggle did you all experience with that, and how did you deal with some of that?
Yeah, I think it's just hard to see a man who's been so successful and has such a powerful mind and a heart for people be frustrated in not being able to do that where he wanted to. He also loved the local church and given that way, and not being able to be in the local church any longer, and got to the point where he couldn't go to church, he couldn't be around, not even during COVID, he had cancer and was going through treatment for that as well. And so he just couldn't be very public and couldn't be around very much. And that was hard. He and Mom, relationship-based ministry their entire lives together. So now to be separated from relationship was very difficult. So it was hard for us to see that. Made for some funny text conversations because he became harder to understand and he couldn't type very well because of the tremors. So we got all kinds of crazy text messages from him. The kids would be,
So there's a gentleman that we know that's struggling with the exact same thing. He has Parkinson's, has had cancer, and the medications for one fight the medications for the other, but he can't sleep. He doesn't have a regular sleep pattern either. So it'll 3 a.m. You get a text message from him that's, he's half awake, half asleep, half tremors, and it makes for very funny texts and something totally out of the wall of it's 3 a.m. and he's like, hey, did you get that pie recipe? No, but I'll look at it in the morning. All right?
Look back at it.
You responded?
5 hours, I'll look at it.
No, I didn't. I did not respond at 3 a.m. If I don't respond to a 6 a.m. Taco Bell text,
Exactly.
yeah.
I'm not responding to a 3 a.m. Parkinson's text, probably.
You were getting ready to get offended, weren't you?
Just a little bit. I was about to stand up and everything.
Can see it in your eyes. See it in your eyes.
Yeah. But, making light of a situation that's not it is a hard struggle for Parkinson's, specifically in this case. But.
Yeah, and moving into a different living situation, leaving the house and going into independent assisted kind of environment was hard. Hard for Mom, who was there for him. She really wasn't at the stage of life that need to be in a place like that, and it limited her freedom as well, especially when COVID hit. So that was a hard struggle she had. I mean, she's for him. They're one, and it wasn't a matter of that, but it was just it's hard to see all that go on as kids, and to understand her and her struggles and frustrations with it, and also to understand Dad's viewpoint. Dad got to the point he used to get in his car when he shouldn't have been driving, but he would get in the car and drive around the parking lot of the facility they were living in just to do it, because he was so frustrated with it. There was one little thing he could do. Now, every once in a while, he tried to venture out to the Home Depot parking lot or something like that. And
left turn, right.
Reel him back in.
Mom had to reel it back in, but and then the car broke down. So, but no, it was an interesting thing. But he's better now, and that's the cool part of it is you can't be too down because of his struggle was so strong and so real for those last couple months for sure. Happy for him, and we'll miss him, and
the influence, and just like our society, where we like to see the results, but someone like your dad will never, like you were saying, will never know the impact. I mean, now he does because he's looking down on us all, but just it's just neat that all the seeds that he planted, and y'all are seeing those seeds, and everyone that's coming up to y'all and giving a kind word. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's neat. And Mom's gotten cards from people she doesn't even know, and there are people that watch them and saw them. They were in the church, but they didn't really know them personally. Watched them, saw them. It's a big church, big place, or people who had some sort of connection from afar, and they're just sending a note saying, "Hey, just praying for you." And this is what Jim was to us, and it's like that's so wild. But those pictures.
To me, that brings up a great point of somebody's always watching, whether it's from inside the same church or the same office you work in, or somebody who you happen to take lunch break at the same place every day. Like, people are always your kids, if you have young kids. I mean, they're always watching, and man, one little slip up can ruin a picture of Christ for somebody.
It can, yeah,
for sure,
yeah, but also too, I think it's important to look at how we handle a slip up. Right, a slip up can ruin it, but your response to that slip up can also build something significant too. Yeah, Dad wasn't a perfect man. Mom and Dad weren't perfect parents, but they were parents chasing Jesus, and they were men and women chasing Jesus, and that's the most critical thing, and that's that leadership, that's that example that they were setting all the time, and I think that's an important piece. Is you're right. I mean, there's always someone watching. I tell my kids all the time, you're leading somewhere, every time you step out of your house. You're leading somebody somewhere. And
It's a great quote.
Yeah.
And so you be thinking about what you're leading them to and
Right.
who you're leading them to.
Just pause. I'm going to write that one down. So,
Do that.
Yeah. Feel
We
free,
saw-
feel free to talk there,
We
right?
need
we saw you
like
put
a
that pen up.
T-shirt list.
We do need a
Because we-
T-shirt.
Because we get
We got at least, what,
we get
20
so
now?
many good, so many good lines that are dropped on us. Go.
Make sure we get one of our sponsors to do that for us.
Hey,
Get that chain rolling. Merch.
Check out the website and get some of these T-shirts. We
Yeah.
don't have listed yet. But,
They'll be up in their
Keep
shop.
on checking every day.
yeah. If you email mailroom@gpstogod.com and say you want some T-shirts, we'll make it happen. So, but that I like that. You're leading someone somewhere. So that's great. Man, kids, you kind of broach it. Let's talk about your kids because they are doing some leading in some pretty cool places.
Yeah.
You have 3 kids, 2 boys and a girl, all 3 in college, all 3 college athletes.
Yes.
Nice.
Very special for us sports junkies. Very special thing, but really just a cool experience for them.
It is.
You know, so what is that like being a dad, a athlete, a sports fan, having 3 college athletes?
3 college athletes.
Busy.
It's pretty cool, but I can tell you right now,
very busy.
it means I'm old. Right? it means I'm tired. It means I'm broke. Those are the 3 things, and desperate for some God in my life. Right?
That's the kid's nickname. One of them is old, the other one's tired, the other one's broke.
Yeah. But yeah, it's fun. It's a good problem to have, trying to figure out how we're going to manage the weekends and which one's going where. And we like to go together as much as we can, but there's some need to separate. We're separating this weekend. But it's fun.
For sports, not for good.
Yeah.
Clear
To
that
go
up.
to ball games. Go to ball games. We're in this together.
Didn't know if we needed to pray for y'all or not.
Yeah, well, you need to pray for
Pray
us.
regardless.
Yes.
Pray regardless.
Pray for Brooke. But no, Brooke and I, it's a really cool thing to have this situation we're in. God has given them a passion for sports, given them a passion for developing, and also just protected and gone before them in a lot of things as well. And you know, they have wanted it and worked to get to their goals. They have had things go on in life that could have derailed those things. And you know, they've all had their struggles of things to work through, and stay committed to, and God's given them the desires, and so it's fun. It's fun to see them succeed. They're all, you know, having success at the next level, and that's a fun thing to be a part of. And they have injuries, and they have to wrestle with God's purpose and what that was, just like I did. And you know, and they have been, you know, both of our boys have transferred, gone to one place, and had success there, but felt like God was taking them somewhere else. And that was a bigger step in faith for one of them than the other. The other was just like, hey, I got to get out of this environment. It's not good for my spiritual life. It's not good for my personal. It's a lot of bad. And he needed to preserve himself and get back to who he knew he needed to be. Big move, bold move for him. And it was a great thing, and God's using that and honoring that.
Do we want to say the schools they go to, or
Yeah,
no? We don't have to. But,
Yeah, no,
but I
Jay-
will say, since he's about to do it, there's only a handful of college football teams today. What's today? October 5th. Today's October 5th. There's only a handful of college football teams remaining that are undefeated. One of his boys plays on one of those teams.
Interesting.
Yeah. So,
Very interesting.
yeah, Jaden, the oldest, is 22. He's at Erskine College,
Right.
D2 school in Due West, South Carolina.
You don't want to get hit by him. I've seen some videos.
He's smaller of the two, but he's got some physical.
I think lay the wood is the that's the scientific term.
He
scientific
likes
term.
contact.
He likes contact.
Both
not
of
shy
them like
away.
contact, but then little brother, bigger, is tight end at Coastal Carolina, and that's the undefeated program.
Nice.
And,
Nice.
and having a lot of success. both are doing really well. And then Abby Lynn is at Auburn Montgomery.
Okay.
And in Montgomery, Alabama, running there. She runs cross country and track there. So
Nice.
she's loving it. And it's been a year of transition for us. A lot with Jake's transfer to Coastal from Jacksonville State, where he was initially. Jaden had transferred the year before. Abby leaving the house, going away to school, and Brooke and I both. We just talked about losing my dad, but Brooke lost her father in February, so we have lost both of the grandfathers and had all that going on. It's been a crazy year.
Yeah.
And but God's good, and there's good in all of that as well.
So I need a little mentorship here. I'm entering a stage that you're very familiar, a stage of life that you're very familiar with. My daughter's a senior in high school. She's about to leave the nest. What is that like? What do I need to expect? How do, you talked about God protecting them when they move on. How do you deal with that? How did you deal with that? Give some great advice here. I'm going to have to listen to this a couple times.
Well, I'll tell you, I wasn't great at it, right? I spent 18 years in student ministry, right? And coaching and doing student ministry. And that was an area that I was absolutely clueless in. Is sending a kid to college. I didn't understand what parents were dealing with when they went through it. I did those seminars for parents, how do you send your kid off, did all that. And they must have listened to that and then left and been like,
this is what you're supposed to do, but I'm not going to do that, or I don't know.
Yeah, 2 months later, they must have been, that dude's an absolute moron, which they would have been right. I am, but So really, man, the biggest struggle was trusting God with our kids. And we do that at every phase, right? And I thought I knew how to do that. But when our hand is daily in contact and we're in the midst all the time, it's one thing. But when, I go away to college and you may get a call, you may not. It may be a week or 2 weeks or some, I think one of ours probably 3 weeks he'd prefer. But those calls aren't coming in as much as you want them to. You don't have that constant daily connection. You're wondering where they are, and iPhones don't, and all the social media stuff doesn't help you in those regards, right? Because you're looking, where are they? What are they? What is he doing over there? All that our parents didn't have to deal with.
Absolutely,
it's a lose situation, because you begin to want to take the place of the Lord and build their protection around what you're going to do for them. You want to bubble wrap them. You want to go. And as a parent, the worst place you can be is trying to substitute the place of God in your kid's life. Yeah. And so you have to get to the point to trust Him with their good decisions, their bad decisions. Trust Him with who they're becoming. And that isn't always the sight you want to see. There may be moments where that doesn't look like what you hoped it would look like. And there may be moments when they absolutely blow your mind in being mature. Beyond what you expected or what you are sometimes, right?
You knew how to do that? Okay.
Yeah.
Keep on.
Yeah, and
I don't know if I told this story on here before or not, but Carter, my son, when he was 4 or 5 years old, playing t-ball, first time he'd ever been on a team, and he had a great coach, a lady coach. She was wonderful, perfect coach for that age. After the game, she brought popsicles one day after the game. And so practicing, or the game ends, all right, everybody come get a popsicle. So Carter is kind of at the back of the line. He walks up, and I'm just, I'm 10 feet away from him, whatever, waiting on him to get his popsicle. He walks up to the coach, takes it. He says, "Thank you. Can I please have one for my sister?" And I remember thinking in that moment, I don't know that I would have asked for anybody else other than myself to have a popsicle. And my 4-year-old son is out here showing me how it's done, kind of thinking about somebody else.
Proud pops.
They wouldn't have gotten them, but I'd ask for a lot of other people to have them, probably.
Yeah. Proud pops moment.
Yeah, I was proud, but sometimes they're going to do stuff that is better than you, like I wouldn't have done that. Mm-hmm. feel like a failure. But
Yeah.
it's good though. I mean, you're pouring in.
Yeah.
You hope you're pouring in
Right.
good stuff.
Well,
for them.
the other side of that is, Deuteronomy. I mean, we talked about God as we came and as we went, as we we had the Lord as a part of their lives continually growing up, and we were surrendered to God, and that took us to places we never thought we would go, to do things we never thought we would do, and God was always present in their lives through grandparents' example, our example. One of the coolest things that I was challenged in early in our kids' lives is to pray blessing over our kids, to pray with them, not just to pray for them, but to pray with them, pray scripture over them, and I committed to that. And we'd read the verse and pray that verse for them. And there's a list of 42 verses in the front of my Bible, and those are the verses that we would pray. And my daughter still does it. Still wants it to happen. And she's away at college, and it's cool. The boys, they know it happens. They don't always call for it or lean in for it all the time anymore, but they know it's happening. And I haven't stopped doing that. But that is what they grew up in, and we had to trust that we had invested. And there's times you go, man, what in the world? What were we doing? Right? No one feels like they've done everything they needed to do or done a great job at any point.
Sure.
And Brooke says all the time, God, we were so bad. And there were points in life where we were really bad. My oldest has some there's some places in his world, in his life where, man, the oldest is like a guinea pig, right? And we did some things wrong in that, and there's some things that, we didn't know. Like, we found out 3 weeks before he graduated high school he had ADHD. Well, I mean, he's a warrior to look back at that, and know that, man, you just went through all this and you struggled through grades and fought to get the grades and stay eligible and stuff.
Yeah.
And, here we are hounding you for your grades and on you and disciplining you, grounding you for, for whatever. And we should have been dancing, instead of hounding you. And there's, some of those kinds of things. I mean, it was just ignorance. We didn't know.
Right.
And no one had told us to go have him tested. Crazy thing. Yeah. The teacher was like, hey, before he goes to school, you may want to have him. And we're like, now we get this. So thankful for her, because now it's mattered in college. But he dealt with that, and our response to it when he was really doing what a lot. So it's like, our bad. And as a dad can do, like, losing my cool at different times with that. And those are moments that you don't get back. You can talk things out and you can but there's moments you don't get back, and you can't dwell in those moments. Like, he can't, he shouldn't hold them against me forever. At the same time, it is what happened.
It affects them in some way. Yeah.
Right.
But it's all part of a journey, and God's using those things now and transforming his life and building him.
And like you said, that's the, somebody's watching. How do you respond to a mistake? Because we're going to make mistakes. Mm-hmm. I mean, nobody is perfect.
Right.
How do you respond to those?
I think, too, probably the most significant thing that happened in our life, parenting them, was the DR.
Let's get into that. So that's the main reason we're here. It just took us a half hour to get warmed up here. But Brad is a part of I guess you started it, but a ministry called Until They Know, and we're going to get into the details of that. But it is a ministry that serves in the Dominican Republic. So Until They Know, what is it? How did God put that on your heart? How did it start? All that kind of stuff.
Yeah. So,
and how can we come hang out on a tropical island with
Come on, man. Sign up. Let's go. We can get you a ticket and we're gone. So people ask us how we ended up in the DR, and we usually say kicking and screaming because it wasn't on our radar. And
so for the uninitiated, DR is Dominican Republic.
Yeah, sorry.
Yep.
But I'd been in student ministry, took a trip to London with an organization. The guy who started or was the director of that organization was in our church. He said, hey, I want to do some street evangelism. You got some students that are ready for something like that in London. Cool, let's go. While we were there, he was interviewing a family, a couple, to go and run or be a part of an orphanage staff in the Dominican Republic. And Dominican Republic, Spanish-speaking nation. And so while we're there, he's interviewing. That interview didn't go great, so that didn't happen. But during one of my interactions with someone on the streets in London, he heard me speaking Spanish. Well, he was like, okay, you speak Spanish? I'm like, yeah. And he said, I need somebody that speaks Spanish in the Dominican Republic, in Puerto Plata. So just a seed. And I told Brooke, she was like, not a chance. No way. We were comfortable in our little youth ministry world, doing well, enjoying things. Young kids at that time, 7, 5, 3. And, just we were good. And then over the next 10 months, randomly saw this guy, and every time he said something. And every time I came back to Brooke, and she's like,
"You're funny."
So, yeah.
Is she from the southern United States?
She is. She's from Alabama.
Okay.
And so
it always lived in the South somewhere, right?
Yeah. And her only mission trip to ever go on before that point was to Elizabethton, Tennessee, right? So that was,
which is in the South, but it could be its own little place.
It may be another country, but no, it's but that was it. And it was a few days, and she was over there, and we took students over there. So I had always I had done missions in youth ministry, had a heart for missions, enjoyed them, but didn't I thought I had walked away from ever being a missionary in life. I'd gone on, and so this came up, and Brooke was reading Abraham and Sarah's story with my mom one day, talking about that, and Sarah's laughter struck a chord with Brooke, and she was like, "Wait a second, hang on, so you're going to give this promise, and you're going to give this, and you're going to tell and call, and she and I'm laughing, and so a week later, I come home. We've had missions conference going on at the church. I'm doing student ministry. We did a youth thing with missions and stuff, and in the service that morning, Brooke was doing nursery, so she wasn't there. But Dale, who had been on that trip, he's the one that led that trip to London, mentioned me, said something in passing about we'll see if we can get him into missions. I think he may be, and everybody ha 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 ha, yeah. And I was like, and so I got like this feeling in my stomach, and so I tried to blow that off all day. And then I get home that night, and it's 10:30 at night. Brooke, she's a godly woman, but she doesn't do this typically. She had 4 versions of the Bible out on the floor in our bedroom, and she's down on her knees, and she's crying. And, I'm either like, what did I do? That's usually my first, she's crying. It's usually my fault. So I'm thinking, what did I do? And then I'm like, what's this all about? The 4 Bibles, and, it's different translations. And she's like, I've got to get peace about something. She said, I can't find peace. And we had talked about that for a few weeks. And she did a couple things that she thought were not, we're going to bring that peace. And neither one of those did. So we're not the brightest. And, well, she is. I'll bring her down. But at 4:30 in the morning, we kind of looked at each other and we go, is this about the DR? And at that moment, it was like, oh, my gosh. This is about the DR. And so at 6:30, I call Dale because I knew he got up around, early. And I call him at 6:30, and he's like, I'm at the airport getting ready to fly to Puerto Plata. And I'm like, I'm like, well, funny you bring that up. And I said, well, Brooke and I have spent all night talking, and I think we may need to go down there and take a look. And so a few weeks later, we were down on the ground, took a look. And actually, your brother went up with us on that trip.
Okay. Yeah.
And
That's the one he married.
That's cool.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
And it was, there weren't angels singing. It wasn't like, you think that's what's going to happen, like this. And it didn't. And we came back going, maybe, and then we took students down in July. And during that trip, we took our kids as well. And all along, we've been praying and thinking, and this is maybe and probably and all that. And it was interesting to see God call our kids to it as well as calling us. But when we saw them on the ground, they just jumped in and they were gone. And they were running around that orphanage and all in. So we went down to run that orphanage and to build a discipleship ministry out of that orphanage in the community and working with other pastors around the area.
How old were you at this time?
Oh, my gosh.
Do you remember?
Late 30s and late 30s. So it was good. But we that was significant for our kids to be in that environment, to live there. Now that story went really crazy. That's for another day, another podcast, whatever. It's because it went crazy in a hurry, and we ended up breaking the kids and had to come back to the States. But we went to run the orphanage, ended up not running the orphanage, learning a lot of lessons really quickly about culture and about developing world nations and about the ugly of those kinds of things, and had to regroup. So we came back to regroup, and God used that moment in our life, and it was attacks made at us, attacks at me, and when we showed up after all of that, the people were amazed that we were back and amazed that we were there, and God used that to build a foundation of relationship that He's launched from that point, and it's humbling. It still can be emotional. We thought we knew desperation of God. We thought we knew that we thought we felt like, we need God. We're desperate for Him, and had no clue. And just to let you in, it was, I was charged with some things, trafficking.
Wow.
And us being there ended some efforts or thwarted some efforts of guys that were doing that. They put it all on me.
Wow.
Long story short, we 3-month trial, 3-month process, got through it. God was glorified. God was our everything in those moments. To be arrested in the Dominican Republic is not a good thing. It's not a great feeling. And
I would say anywhere, but it is worse in some places than others.
Yeah. I mean,
sure.
Maybe Goodlettsville's not so good. But no, it's probably a good point.
You should see near Kentucky where Ryan lives.
Yeah. Good point. It's not good to be arrested anywhere, but to stand in front of a judge in a place like that was really scary, and having no answers.
And you said you spoke Spanish. How well? Were you well versed in Spanish? Or?
I was 5 years of Spanish in school, good, but not really good.
To be in that kind of serious situation.
Right.
And still have a language barrier.
Very dependent on translators, very dependent on someone else talking for me and with me. But I understood the hardest thing of the Spanish there is it's a lot of slang. It's different than what we learned in schools,
and it's different in Dominican Republic than Cuba, than Mexico, than Puerto Rico.
And the hardest part was learning to listen in Spanish because it's different, and the rhythm's different, and so catching the words and then the slang on top of that, like "Cómo está," right? How are you?
Yeah.
In the DR, it's "Cómo está." It's like,
wow.
It's like you're talking Southern English, right? It's pretty much what we do. It's redneck Spanish is what it is.
Yes,
merge it all together.
Wow.
So that was hard, but so that was the biggest piece of that. And the kids, they became fluent pretty quickly. Most of them. The more you talk, the easier it is to become fluent. The younger you are, it's easier too.
Right.
So they all did pretty well. Brooke and I had enough Spanish background. Brooke had none. So not only was I dragging her to a place, she did.
I promise there's beaches somewhere around here. There's beaches, sand.
I said, you took French. Who takes French?
I did.
Yeah, but
he was chasing the women though. He heard it was love language. He's like,
I
I'm
can't
down for
speak
that.
outside of bonjour. I'm done.
Yeah, but she was able to use some French because we work with a lot of Haitians in the DR as well, and the Creole is really close to French. So she was able to communicate some in French. So God used it, but God's the only one that can make it useful, I guess. But that impacted our kids' lives. All of them feel led to do something career-wise that was impacted by their time in the DR. Maybe it's not always missions, but there's something that God used them to do there, and gave them opportunity to grow a heart for that they feel in their life to come and beyond school. There's going to be, whether it's justice stuff, serving underserved and being in part of that, or working. One of the things we worked with, we got out of orphan care, went into community development, and kind of attacking the things that lead to slavery and lead to trafficking and stuff. But one of the things we did continue to work with was special needs orphanage. One of our kids wants to work with Down syndrome adults and doing that, and then Abby's wanting to be a nurse and do medical missions and things like that with it. So it's in their heart, it's in their minds and blood cool. now, and that's probably the greatest thing we did in parenting was just go and give them a chance to be in another world and be used by God themselves.
Yeah,
to be called to something at such a young age.
So you left the orphanage life and left the what's that, Judge Judy, People's Court life. Until they know, how did that develop out of the other experiences?
So we came back and regrouped, and part of that regrouping was redefining what we were going to do, because we knew God wasn't done in the DR. We didn't sense that, and we firmly believe that if He's leading you somewhere else, He's closing the door of where you are to lead you somewhere else, and He never closed that door. And we thought, okay, if we're going to be fools if we're going to leave and not go back. So we immediately just started planning, what's going back look like? We put ourselves in places to learn, and to take the lessons that we saw and the things that we saw, and apply them in a way that would be productive. And so take this ugly and turn it into something that we can respond in a gospel way with. And so one of the places was When Helping Hurts, the Chalmers Institute, Covenant College, and digging into When Helping Hurts, and Bob Lupton, in Atlanta area. He's doing a lot of great things in community development, rebuilding dead places, and seeing dry bones come to life, and that was really, those two places were significant for us, and then Steve Saint has an organization in Orlando, ITech, working with indigenous tribes, and I don't know if y'all know Steve, but Nate Saint, Into the Spear. Nate Saint was with Jim Elliott. They were martyred in Ecuador. That whole story.
Yeah.
So Steve grew up in that village, and went away, and then went back and realized that one of the biggest things was they didn't give away ownership to the local people. So the local people were waiting for the next set of missionaries to come and tell them what to do. And so those lessons learned, like that one of the biggest takeaways was it's got to be theirs. We got to know that we're the outsiders. We're coming in. We're encouraging them. We're their cheerleaders. So that's, I tell people I'm a professional cheerleader, and that's what we are. I mean, we're cheering on the gospel, cheering on those local churches and communities, and fanning their flames of faith in whatever way God leads us to.
How can somebody, individuals or a group of people, help or get involved with Until They Know?
That we do trips. That's the most forefront way. But there's also we have you know, in what we're doing, which is, countering the slavery, countering the trafficking situations. We have businesses that we start, so helping with seed money for a business is a significant thing. You know, as people come out of slavery and become business owners, and it's a process of walking with them through biblical training of what all that looks like, what it means to honor the Lord with your money, to honor the Lord with resources, and all of that. But also, some practical steps to running a business. I mean, when you've never had more than $15 in your hand at one time, to all of a sudden have the ability to make some financial decisions. I mean, there's a lot of coaching that needs to go around all that, and we don't start it until they get all that.
Right.
But we also don't let them go in it by themselves. They have to have a group of people to go into that business with. So the money's never theirs personally. It's that businesses, and there's accountability and all that. But that's one way. One of those businesses that we started is a water filter factory. We're making water filters. Water is a big need in the DR. There's no pure water in the whole place except for bottled water. So these filters will purify sewage to drinkable. Potable. Yeah.
Nice.
Pretty significant. And the rivers and rivers and creeks around Puerto Plata are a lot of sewage in them, and a lot of everything else. So that's where their water source for most places, and that we work in. Business enterprise is something desperately needed. Opportunities needed. So those are ways to be involved. Purchasing a water filter that then can go into a home, providing 8 years of clean water, 8 gallons a day for 8 years is what we say. We believe those filters will go longer than 8 years. They may be lifetime filters. Reburn them and do some things to bring them back to life after a period of time. We monitor all that real closely, so we're making sure that they're functioning as they're supposed to. There's also, just come be involved in living life with people. Everything's relationship based, So relationships. We're not this big project ministry. We don't do these big buildings and stuff like that. It's not what God's called us to do. That does happen from time to time because we do what the community invites us into, right? So if there's a fire or something in a community and that's their biggest need and that's what they ask us to be involved in, then we're going to. And we're going to walk alongside of them. We may bring a team in. Some of the resources from that team are going to go in. The people are going to work together. But really, we want them to own it all. We want them to take the lead. So they invite us. We do it. If they don't invite us, we're not creating it because it's important for us to know our place and theirs.
Well, it goes back to the ownership you were talking about before. If they don't buy, if it's something we force on them, we're the outsiders, like you said. Yeah. So it's not gonna. They don't care about something outside.
And COVID has really, it's changed what we're doing. It's changed how we do it. It's things have slowed a lot in the team side of things. We did 15, 16 trips a year prior to COVID. This past year we did 4. It's a lot slower, but. What's happened is it's allowed us to really develop our staff, give them where they had ownership of things. They still were constantly looking over their shoulder at me, waiting for my approval, for my yes, for my, redirection or whatever. And I'm locked here through COVID. They're there. Ministry's still moving forward. We got some cool opportunities and expanded some opportunities like y'all, like this grew out of COVID, right?
Yeah.
And our, we have a ministry through social media and stuff and created some pages and did some things locally that all came out of COVID. And it was because we were looking for ways to connect. We also got into new communities through food delivery and stuff, working with the local Red Cross and local officials. Our staff volunteered, got us into new places, allowed us to get into the places we were already in with permission on places that were closed because we were bringing food so we could touch base and pray for people and say hey and maintain relationships. But discipleship, pastor development, leadership training for churches is a big part of what we're doing now. It's a bigger part than it was pre-COVID, and it's really God was putting that on our heart, but COVID said, here it is, and this is what you get to do now.
Yeah.
And it's been fun to watch that develop. And we'd love for churches and leadership to come down and, everybody can be a part of that. You can sit. What's relationship ministry look like? Sitting down with a lady, some ladies from this church or another church or a business or whatever, sitting down with some ladies in the DR as they wash clothes or as they cook and just having conversations with them. We call them Jesus talks, right? Look for an opportunity, and just sit down and talk about your life, talk about their life. And if, Jesus will come up in that conversation.
Right.
As you talk about parenting, as you talk about, work at home, whatever it is, introduce Jesus into that conversation. That's relational ministry.
Mm-hmm.
That's what it is. It's not a big project. You don't have to go on a mission trip to construct or to host an event. And let's just sit down with people and talk and hang out. And that's a ministry place. And it's a cool thing about how missions has changed and some understanding of missions too, is that man, you can do what you do here in America, anywhere in the world, and you can get a job and you can do it, and you can let who you are, what your design is, what your experience is. Sounds like, God maybe had some purpose in how he created us, huh? And you can use that, right? He can use that in ways that build his kingdom.
Yeah.
And, you don't have to, I didn't study missionology in seminary. I didn't do it. Wasn't a missiology guy. It wasn't missions. It was just, let's go do it. And let's go love on people. We say, Chuck love, spew grace, give life. Be imitators of God. Well, everywhere we go, if we throw love at it, it gets better.
Yeah.
If we come with grace, it's there. And that's life-giving. So
I don't know if we have time to answer this or how deep you want to go into this, but you've talked about the slavery aspect and helping people come out of that. I mean, I don't even know how to phrase the question, but what are some of the things you see? How do you help people come out of that? How broken are they? What are some of the things they deal with coming out of that?
Yeah, I mean, it's just obviously there's
because we think, I'm sorry to cut you off,
Yeah.
but in America we think slavery's over.
Yeah.
Right? We hear about it, and we hear about human trafficking and all this stuff on the news, but by and large, in middle-class America, it doesn't affect us. We think it doesn't affect us, but it's a very real thing that goes on everywhere still.
Yeah, it does. And it looks a lot of different ways, and it can look like, what sharecropping looked like. That's the most prevalent way that we see it is kind of, I'm working this farm, but I don't have freedom necessarily, and I don't have rights necessarily. I may have a place to stay, and I'm working on this farm, and that provides for me, but I'm not my own exactly. And if I get off course, then I'm quickly put back in line. There's mistreatment, of those guys, where you're hired, you're doing a job, then they throw you out and don't have to give you anything in return, and they bring somebody else in to finish the work you were doing. Not having documents, right? Whether you're in the DR or any other country, not having documents means you don't have any right to petition government to defend you, right?
You don't exist.
There's no justice for you. So those are issues. Even there's Dominicans that don't have birth certificates and documents. So they're undocumented Dominicans and with no rights. The Haitians that are there, undocumented, a lot of them, most of them, no rights. And so there's that. There's prostitution is legal in the Dominican Republic. Underage prostitution is not well policed. Pimping is supposed to be illegal, but not well policed. It's hard to police that. So that's alive and well, and there's a huge industry around that. A huge industry, a huge aspect of tourism that is around that reality. So those are some tough things to see on a regular basis and to experience. But regardless of what it is, it breaks down your self-esteem. It breaks down your identity. It breaks down your dreams. Like most people in the DR, you ask them what they want to be, what are their dreams. It's hard for them to give that answer. And a lot of them, when they do, it's usually thinking right here in my little village or my community. And it's not broader than that. When we start talking about, what business would you do if you could start a business, what would it be? They immediately think right there in that little pocket of the world. And I mean, sometimes that's 200-person village or 750-person village in community, and it's like this is their world, and it's hard for them to get outside of that and think something big, and that is because of that mindset of being not being your own and not having an identity that way. Even in that documentation, you don't get to go to school. It's not in the DR until recently. It was not even required to be in school. Now they try and require it, but it doesn't always happen. And again, in countries like developing countries, the policing and enforcing of laws is hit or miss.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I mean, if you're trying to enforce things in dozens or hundreds of small villages of 200 people, like you said, or 300 people or 700 people, well, that's a hard thing to enforce, and to enforce similar standards and, all that kind of stuff as well.
Yeah. So, and, poverty, slavery and all that's grown out of poverty, right? Poverty is brokenness. It's broken people, broken things, broken systems. And that's really where our focus in attacking the trafficking, attacking the prostitution, the slavery is attacking the poverty. If we can bring poverty, so until they know, Colossians 2:2-3 is the root of that. And he says that they would be encouraged in heart and united in love as they come to know the mystery of God, namely Christ, in whom is hidden the treasures of wisdom and understanding and knowledge. That verse is where we get our name from. Until they know Christ, that mystery of God, namely Christ, and until they know who they are in Him, have understanding and wisdom about their design, their purpose, the things God wants for not just their life but their family, their community, and you don't know that until you know Christ. Mm. Christ is the answer to poverty. Yeah. Because I'm not going to live for either one of y'all if I don't know Jesus, because I don't understand who I am. I don't understand my design. I don't understand that I need relationships with other people. Not just to use them, but to make them better and to make myself better.
Yeah, right.
That's how God made us. So it's about community and it's about relationship. And if we're not doing that, then the issues of broken systems, broken people, broken places, broken nations isn't going to change. It's the answer is Jesus for everything that's going on in these places. And we are the wealthiest impoverished nation that there is. I mean, because this is a place of poverty.
Yeah.
Because it's a bunch of broken people running around America, broken systems and broken places.
I believe that, America, greatest nation in the world, if you take a survey, that's what many people are going to say from here and from beyond. But because we don't have some of the same difficulties as a developing nation, that pulls us away from God too. I fully believe that our easy lives with all the technology and advantages we have, well, now we're not dependent on, we're dependent on ourselves. Well, I got this under control. I don't need help from it. And I think that pulls us away from God as well, because it puts us in control. We feel like we're in control and got everything handled.
Well, what's our nature? Our nature is for self, right?
Absolutely.
Our nature is for me. And that's an easy place to go to. And it's the easiest place for men to go to is I'm going to take care of me and I'm going to live for myself and do it all this way. And God's design isn't that. And that's the coolest opportunity we have in our day to day and in our mission is to share that message with people. And that's what our hope is that in the villages of Puerto Plata and around and wherever we go, that's the message. Jesus is what you need.
Like, is religion practiced there? I mean, is it like, how is like spreading the word? Is that something that how is that received when y'all are down there?
They're comfortable with Scripture. They're comfortable with Bible. It was for years. It was until '85. It was a Catholic nation. Okay. So they're familiar with God, familiar with that, practicing. But as other denominations came in, as missions arrived beyond the Catholic Church efforts, the gospel became very twisted, very man-driven, I guess, and there are a lot of crazy things that are taught. So if someone says they're a Christian, we go through the gospel regardless of their response in that, because we don't know what gospel they've heard.
Yeah, what version are you running?
Right. Yeah. So we've got simple gospel, and we need to make sure that that's where they are. There are a lot of people who believe certain things have to happen before you can pray to receive Christ. You have to have a vision. You have to have a dream. You have to have some kind of experience that leads you there. And the pastors, for the most part, in our area in particular, are less trained. They're more charismatic personalities, leaders. They've got other jobs. Okay. They're there, bivocational guys who are doing the best they can to connect some, but they really are lost in what they're doing. Not lost spiritually, but lost in what they're doing. A lot of them have very little understanding of Scripture. They were just picked because they were an influential person in that community, and the pastor that was there, set them in place, and they took off, and they're doing what they do. But it's tough, and I always have the pastor read the verse I'm going to be preaching out of when I'm preaching in the church, and a lot of times I have to find it before I give it to them. I'll find it pre-service and have it marked so that they don't have to struggle to find it, because they don't find it. Right. And for a pastor to be in that place is a tough deal. And so I don't hold it against them.
Of course,
they're there. Right. They're trying to lead. They're doing the best they can. But that's on us. We've got to prepare them, and we've got to make sure that they have the tools and the resources they need to grow. And that's this next season of Until They Know it's more about building up the local church, discipling communities, discipling their leaders, and I would, our BHAG, our big, hairy, audacious goal is to see God send missionaries from these villages where median income in a home is maybe $40 a month to other communities, other cities in the DR and beyond. I'd love to see them go to the Middle East, where a lot of Hispanic ministries are sending people to the Middle East because of like culture and look and things like that. There, and to see God do something like that would be so cool. But
and they have a lot of the same work systems that I've experienced, where people come over and kind of the sharecropper of you're not a human really. You're a worker. Yeah. And if you happen to die on a job site or you're just not performing, see you later. There's 100 people lined up behind you to get there. So that would be really cool.
That's what God's put on our heart, and I believe He's gonna do it, and we're raising those people up. We have discipleship groups growing in number and reproducing themselves in villages all over the place. And through COVID, we went to 4 new places, and we saw church plants pop up during COVID, cool. And God did some really cool stuff. But that's the wave that we're going is discipleship development and leadership training.
Well, if you would like to know a little bit more about Until They Know, you can check out their website. It is UTK223. That's the numbers, 223.org. UTK223.org. You can check them out on social media at UTK223 as well. Until They Know. So if your church, your business, you as an individual want to help contribute and come alongside them and do some of the cool things they're doing, check them out, UTK223.org, or at UTK223. I don't know if this is a question, but it's an observation from us talking today. You're never too old to go out, listen to God, and change your life, change your path. And that's something I see talking today from your father and from you. His early 50s, an abrupt change, and became a minister and chased that life. And in your late 30s, a sudden change of direction and moving. And I mean, that's a great example of go where God's calling you. Don't be stuck in, I'm in charge. I know what I'm doing. I know it. Like,
yeah. And I mean, we're all capable. And, God, missions, the biggest change in missions is it's not working in a compound and having having to be seminary trained and all that. Missions is right now, it's just being willing to go and be used by God and saying the yes. And he can take who you are and what you do and put it in the mission field and and be about Him.
Well, Brad, man, thanks so much for coming. We could
Thank
sit
you
and
so
talk
much.
for
Awesome. Thank you.
another hour
This is
here,
great.
and I know there's tons of stories that you could have shared that you haven't, and but we'll bring you back again, man. Next time you're up this way, we'll stop on by. We'll do it.
I'd love it. I like to talk about what God's doing, and I like to talk about myself a lot too. So,
well, you fit in perfect.
Yeah.
I mean, if you like
Join the
Taco
club.
Bell,
Join the club.
Yeah.
but you have to, man, come up and keep a Saturday free. We just started old man basketball around here, so.
What are you saying?
I'm saying you
need a referee for the old man basketball.
No, that's my
man,
position.
You out there, you'll put us to shame.
Yeah,
You'll
come
put us to
on,
shame.
come on, ball with us. There's one baller at the table. It's Fano, but man, we're having fun at least. So.
Yeah,
That's cool. That's
trying
cool.
to.
But
Still upright.
still upright.
all
We
that
brought out
matters.
the defibrillator the first
We did?
week just for show. Nobody
We
had
did.
to get shot.
Nobody had to
I
use it.
almost did.
No idea.
I
I
almost
wasn't going
did.
to call you out, but Ryan.
No, yeah, I almost did. It was a rough sight.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. But that was more for the funny to kind of visually shock him back
Yeah.
from not passing out because he wasn't getting mouth to mouth.
No.
he was
There
not.
wasn't
take it. I
anybody
wouldn't take
willing
it
to
from
do
him.
that.
No, we get those paddles ready.
So,
I'd see
but,
Jesus a little faster that day. I would volunteered on that one.
That's hilarious.
But Brad, man, thanks so much for coming and sharing about Until They Know, and man, it's awesome, and expect to get a call from me again and be like, hey, how can I bring a group? So we'll
Come on,
we'll
come
hook it
on,
up.
we got it.
All right. Well, Ryan's had a month off. We're not going to throw him into the frying pan quite yet. Fano, send us home with a Bible verse.
Will do. This is from 1 Corinthians 9:24-27. Do you not know that in a race all the runners run, but only one gets the prize? Run in such a way as to get the prize. Everyone who competes in the games goes into strict training. They do it to get a crown that will not last, but we do it to get a crown that will last forever. Therefore, I do not run like someone running aimlessly. I do not fight like a boxer beating the air. No, I strike a blow to my body and make it my slave so that after I've preached to others, I myself will not be disqualified from the prize. So just shows that, a lot of people in the world, they're trying to get the earthly prize, but our prize goes beyond that. It's eternal.
Yeah, like Brad's talked about a lot today. Just that's what they're trying to do. They're trying to change the world one person at a time and look outside your small surroundings of what's around you. There's a bigger world, bigger picture, and you were created for more. So, Brad, thanks again, man. Thanks
No,
for
thank you
so
guys.
much.
coming out.
Thank
Appreciate
y'all
it.
for what you're doing here.
We had a lot of fun, and this podcast has been listened to in the Dominican Republic already, and
Yes,
we
it
hope
has.
we hope to get a much larger following after this. So,
Vamos.
Need to do a road show.
hey, we would do it for sure.
We got a place. We got a place.
There we go. So,
Arca de Salvacion.
there's our invite. We just got to find a sponsor.
There
so
we go.
yeah,
There we go.
you can reach out to us, mailroom@gpstheguide.com. Let us know how you'd like to sponsor that trip. But the website, we do take donations, gpstheguide.com. So anyway, Brad, thanks so much, man. It
Thank
was
you, Brad.
Dane.
bunch of
Appreciate
fun
you.
catching up and letting people know about Until They Know. So we hope you all enjoyed it. We love you. God loves you more. And we'll see you next week.
Hold on. Sorry, I'm all over the place on this.
I mean, you can start completely over if you want to.
I am. Sorry about that.
It's the first time he's had to read in a month. He's been on paternity leave.
All right.
We put a lullaby to it. Be better.
So 1 Corinthians 9:24-27. Do you not know?
You're going to have to start over.
Sorry, man. I keep on. That lullaby got me, man.
That was a great line.
That was so good. Quick.
Hey, man, he's
Quick.
been through it, man.
It's quick,
Three kids. He's put them out of the house into college.
Sure.
We're not dealing with a rookie over
No,
here.
not at all. Not at all.
And I mean, he's
All right. Let's try this again.
got to be on his game just to survive. You know.
Understand?
Right.
Understand.
Good stuff.
I mean, 78 minutes of that was good. There was a 2-minute span in there.
Yeah, right at the end. Me. Good grief. I kept on reading like this, skipping a line or something.
We heard you. We know exactly what you were doing.
Yeah.
Thanks for listening to GPS to God. Make sure you leave a rating or review on whichever app you happen to use. Also, find us on YouTube and be sure to subscribe to our channel.